The major point is that apartheid Israel adversaries are using bullying/harassment tactics to make it nearly impossible to mourn Palestinian life. That's the gross part too. Like, this is just a mourning of somebody who died non-violently standing up for their rights. B'nai B'rith described Kader Adnan as a convicted terrorist. 1. Not true. He was held because of his ideological beliefs on administrative detention, a legacy of British colonial rule. And 2, even if convicted, it would be by a military court with a 99.9% conviction rate. It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? This to me is a great injustice. The NDP is doing this ridiculous censorship of their own MPP, Sarah Jama, who is a new MPP just elected in the Hamilton Centre by-election, and there was controversy in the by-election from the same organization that is trying to smear Sarah Jama once again, and it is pretty sad to see the NDP kowtow to the pressure. Personally, I would like to see them stand up for human rights, even if they're the rights of brown people in Palestine. Really disappointed once again by the Ontario NDP. Of course, we know that the NDP as an institution is not immune to this colonial mindset. In BC, the Horgan government, which is the NDP government, was responsible for sending police into unceded Wet'suwet'en territory, and that was pretty much the moment where I was like, oh, the NDP is just another colonial party. And over the years, of course, they've moved more and more to the center, or you could even say the right. There's a reason why the left begins at anti-capitalism. There's another reason why no true leftists are card-carrying members of the NDP, because they are another capitalist institution, colonial institution. So they are now censoring Sarah Jama. Activists get nothing but censorship once they join the NDP and hold power in any significant way. The Globe and Mail is reporting on this, as is the Hamilton Spectator, and it's all over a retweet, not even a tweet that Sarah Jama composed herself, but a retweet. So this is honestly just so pathetic. The Globe and Mail here saying that the Ontario NDP is distancing itself from a newly elected MPP's reposted social media message. I guess they had to say repost instead of retweet for people who don't know how Twitter works. That mourned the death of a Palestinian hunger striker associated with a terrorist group, saying that neither the party nor the member of the provincial parliament share those views. Now, they are associated with a terrorist group so much as Israel says they are associated with a terrorist group. The important thing to note here is that the person who died after an 87-day hunger strike was not being charged and was not convicted of any crimes. The association with a terrorist group is kind of something that you would want proven in court, is it not? And it's really unfortunate that the reporting around this, the Globe and Mail and Hamilton Spectator, is super inadequate in identifying what is actually going on here. They're rightly identifying here that the retweet is of an American human rights attorney, Nora Erakat, who called Mr. Adnan, the person who died from hunger strike, 87-day hunger strike, a martyr for freedom. You have to even think to yourself, even in the case that this person is 100% can confirm a known terrorist, why are they dying from an 87-day hunger strike? Why are they being detained without charge? Why is there no trial? Why is there no conviction if these allegations are true? The person in question here, Kader Adnan, you can see videos of Democracy Now! Covering this over 10 years ago. And what the Israeli apartheid state does is they just like round people up and hold them indefinitely in detention without trial. So a common form of protest has become hunger strikes. Kader Adnan is known previously for a 55-day hunger strike. And at one point, people would say that they were the Palestinian Gandhi because of their choice of protest as something that is non-violent. Now, B'nai B'rith criticized Sarah Jama for retweeting it. B'nai B'rith is an organization in Canada. As far as I can tell, they are a pro-Israeli state organization. And the moment you criticize the Israeli state, they conflate it with anti-Semitism, which obviously is an entirely different beast. And unfortunately, it's really disingenuous. And I think it weakens the callouts when there actually is anti-Semitism taking place. By watering it down and saying, hey, you know what? I wish Israeli wasn't an apartheid state and committing genocide against Palestinian people. And then they turn around and say, hey, that's anti-Semitic, to rightfully identify something the way the United Nations has as genocide. And it's like, whoa. That's a step like way too far. So they've tweeted this out. They were also behind the original smears of Sarah Jama, which I covered on my channel previously. She rightfully called out the liberal mindset that is unequipped to deal with this problem. Of course, B'nai B'rith ran with that, called it anti-Semitism. It wasn't. I went over it. The mainstream news media once again got it wrong. It breaks people's brains when they have to deal with the difference between what is anti-Semitism and what is anti-Israel or pro-Palestine. Here is the tweet that got deleted. And I mean, the stupid part is it's still here for everyone to see. I actually have the original tweet right here. Sheikh, community leader, Kader Adnan is the real name, has died on day 90 of his hunger strike in Israeli captivity. His arrest on February 5th was his 13th arrest by the IOF, Israeli Occupation Forces, yeah. And this was his 4th hunger strike. Adnan is the father of 9, the husband of Randa from Araba, and now a martyr for freedom. Hashtag free Palestine. If this on its face is meant to be anti-Semitic, then we have a serious problem in Canada. People are simply saying that, wow, this person died after being arrested 13 times, being detained over the span of like 10 plus years without conviction, without a charge, and dying on his 4th hunger strike. Does that not make him a martyr of freedom? He's not allowed to be a martyr of freedom. It was his 4th goddamn hunger strike. One thing I just want to really point out here is the difference in how we treat the war in Ukraine, which is an illegal occupation from Russia on Ukraine territory, and the occupation of Palestine, which is an illegal occupation from Israel in Palestinian territory. Now, when a Ukrainian person retaliates, even in a violent way, against the Russian occupation, those people are labeled heroes, and Canada says, where do we sign the check? You know, we've given millions upon millions of dollars. It's not a blank check, as people say, but we've given a lot of money and resources to fighting fascism and colonization in so much as Russia is doing it. When Palestinians fight for their rights in non-violent ways, we don't say, hey, where do we sign the check and who do we address it to? We say, oh my God, I can't believe you're being anti-Semitic right now. Sarah Jama, you need to delete your tweet because this is anti-Semitic for you standing up for human rights, right? It's such an obvious parallel, such an obvious contradiction, and it really goes to show how biased Canada is because we are a partner of the United States who is a strong ally with Israel. We are allies with Israel in our own right, and we just leave Palestinian people out to dry to die. They're not even allowed to die with dignity, and when they do die, we're not allowed to call them what they are, which are martyrs for freedom. Now, Michael Bucket is the vice president at Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. And he had a great tweet thread that went through this information with the original tweet here from Laura Stone, who is the person who authored this article in the Globe and Mail. I saw another tweet saying, how come you don't get a person from Palestine to report on this? Or how come not even a person from like the Middle East who's like covering this area? You know, I would like to see a more nuanced perspective because we're clearly not getting it in mainstream Canadian news. So Michael Buquet here says the ONDP has forced new MPP Sarah Jama to untweet and possibly delete her Twitter account, which, okay, so she got it back already because she retweeted legal scholar Fornora, who I should follow, on the death of a Palestinian hunger striker whose treatment was condemned by many human rights groups and UN human rights experts. Pathetic. And it really is pathetic. You know, like the NDP, the Ontario NDP, the NDP in general, they need to grow a goddamn spine because these attacks keep on happening and it's absurd. It's ridiculous. Imagine not standing up for human rights because another group was misnaming it, miscategorizing it as an attack on racism, essentially, as a racist attack. But it's not that. Anyone with half a brain should be able to understand that it's not that. So here's the original tweet we've been through, and here is the UN calling for accountability from Israel for the death of Kader Adnan and mass arbitrary detention of Palestinians in general. Right? And I can't help but imagine, like, what would have happened if Sarah Jama retweeted this from the UN? Would that also still be considered anti-Semitism? And I mean, the other nuance to this too is that Israelis themselves are fighting their own battle with their authoritarian, tyrannical, fascist government. And then what? And then you called Israelis, the Israeli government fascist, and then you're an anti-Semite. It's like, okay, aren't like the Jewish people of Israel also engaged in a battle for their freedom with the fascist state of Israel? It's just wild. So Israel currently holds approximately 4,900 Palestinians in its prisons, including 1,016 administrative detainees who are held for an indefinite period without trial or charge, based on secret information. The number of administrative detainees in Israeli detention facilities is at its highest since 2008, despite repeated condemnation from international human rights bodies and recommendations for Israel to immediately end the practice. In recent years, many Palestinian protesters have resorted to hunger strikes to protest the brutality of Israel's detention practices. I just can't imagine dying from an 87-day hunger strike to protest nonviolently your detention at the hands of a fascist government. And then someone says, oh my God, I can't believe that person died that way. And then B'nai B'rith turns around and says, anti-Semites! This person cares about human life. They must be an anti-Semite. Is that really the point that you want to make? There's also some great resources here from Al Jazeera, just a map going through what we've just read from the UN's call for justice. Palestinians held in Israeli prisons. As of April 2023, there were 4,900 Palestinians held in Israeli jails. To Palestinians, they are political prisoners fighting to end Israel's illegal occupation. 4,900 political prisoners held in Israeli prisons. 1,016 administrative detainees held without charge or trial. Now, Kader Adnan falls into that category. 160 child prisoners, 30 female prisoners, 554 serving life sentences. Am I an anti-Semite simply for acknowledging that these stats are real and that the Israeli government is responsible and there should be calls for this to be changed? There should be justice. There should be calls to justice. Okay, so Sarah Jama got their Twitter back, and Nora, the person who originally was the tweeter and got retweeted by Sarah Jama, she had a Twitter thread on this actually just today. So the controversy over MPP Sarah Jama's retweet about Kader Adnan's death, getting the name right here, which is nice to see, after 87 days of hunger strike in Israeli captivity is so instructive. The major point is that apartheid Israel adversaries are using bullying/harassment tactics to make it nearly impossible to mourn Palestinian life. Yeah. And that's the gross part too. Like, this is just a mourning of somebody who died non-violently standing up for their rights. B'nai B'rith described Kader Adnan as a convicted terrorist. 1. Not true. He was held because of his ideological beliefs on administrative detention, a legacy of British colonial rule. And 2, even if convicted, it would be by a military court with a 99.9% conviction rate. 3. The United Nations considered Nelson Mandela a terrorist until 2008, nearly 2 decades after his release from South African captivity and election into office. Now think about that. Think about how you can just label someone a terrorist without trial. As much as people want to say, hey, Canada has labeled this group Palestinian Islamic jihadists as a terrorist group, and this person could have been part of that group, is affiliated with that group. It's like, okay, well, where's the justice? Then where is the trial that is proving that all of this is true? How come he's dying in captivity as a result of an 87-day hunger strike, being detained on and off for indefinite periods of time for over 10 years? Number 4, Smotrich, in his official capacity, incited Israelis to wipe out Hawara a day after vigilantes launched a program. What is Hawara? It's a location, a Palestinian town. 5, the ease with which the terrorist trope is deployed against Palestinians is predicated on anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia. Purpose is to obscure the context of settler colonialism and apartheid and to justify ethnic cleansing, forced removal, mass incarceration, and killing. I mean, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. 6, my cousin was murdered at a checkpoint, shot 6 times above the waist in 2 seconds, left on the ground to die, and has since been held in a freezer as a hostage. He was immediately declared a terrorist, yet no investigation was ever conducted, and independent reports show otherwise. So not even saying that Kader Adnan was not affiliated with this group, but it's possible, right? You can imagine a world where an apartheid state is doing this, right? So why is it so obscure? Even if you are a terrorist, you shouldn't die after 87 days of hunger strike, after 10 years of on and off being held in detention without charge or conviction. 7, even in the case of a perfect Palestinian victim, as is the case of renowned journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, where Israel admitted culpability, there is zero accountability and consequence. The message is that Palestinians can be killed with ease. 8, none of the coverage of the controversy over MPP Jama's tweet has even bothered to provide context of a Palestinian freedom struggle. Why was Kader Adnan on a hunger strike? Exactly. The coverage doesn't even get into it. Like, they're like, I can't believe. They just say that, oh, B'nai B'rith says that it's anti-Semitic for Sarah Jama to retweet something that says Kader Adnan is a martyr for freedom. And they don't even bother to be like, well, was he? Was he a martyr for freedom? Is it anti-Semitic? Is Israel capable of these things? The journalists, they don't even bother to answer these questions. How many times was he arrested? On what charge? How many Palestinians are being held in captivity? For what? Exactly. The Globe and Mail, the Hamilton Spectator, they don't go through that. The Canadian media doesn't go through that. We had to go to Al Jazeera to see this. And we had to go to see the UN, who's calling for justice. But heaven forbid Sarah Jama do what the UN is also doing and call for justice. Why not make sure you don't miss the next video by liking, commenting, subscribing, and ringing the bell? Thank you so much for watching. It's my homie, too, Taro. Peace.